All righty, welcome everyone to the first day of the Thrive review panel. We are reviewing the Thrive applications. We received over 140. Um, those were scored by 3 dedicated readers who are looking at the mission and key constituencies section of the application. And so the top 59 highest scoring by the readers are being advanced to the full panel today. It's a panel of 5 people. We have one who will be joining us late, so any that she had been assigned as the primary, we will wait for her to uh, review those or make her comments when she is here. All the panelists have preliminary scored and given comments to all the applications. They will be discussing them today. They can change their scores, but are not required to. And the one who is not here will be able to watch the recording. And then tomorrow, if there are any comments that she had that were different than from what has been said, they will be able to be made at that time. Something that's a little bit different this year than how we've done our panels in the past is that there is no interaction between the panels and the applicants. So you all can watch them, but the chat feature is disabled for the panelists and for the staff. So we will not see anything from there that you have questions about. With that recording, again, the panelists who cannot be here right now, but will be joining us shortly or later, will review those and let us know any comments tomorrow. And then at the end, once all 59 have been scored, we will see how those top 35 happen to be, and we'll see if the panel is happy with that and do a final discussion to determine who the highest 35 scoring up to the highest 35 scoring applicants will be. So I think that is all that we have to do. We have 10 minutes maximum review for each application. So we've asked the panelists to keep their comments to 2 minutes or less, and not to repeat anything that has been said. We ask that they give constructive criticism. So they are letting you know what they liked about your application and what they would have liked to have seen to make it better. With that being said, we are ready for the first application up for review, and that is Ground Floor Theater. Lisa and Savita are our primary and secondary, and the 10-minute timing will start whenever Lisa is ready to start giving her comments.
All right. So let's begin with Ground Floor Theater. I scored them relatively high. And I did that because I felt that in each of the categories that their application really represented the work that they do. I think that their activities especially reflect on the goals of Thrive. And the only area that I did not score them at the max was around their mission. And it's not because there's any problem with their mission or I saw any difficulty with their mission. It's just that their mission was not as culturally specific or specifically geared toward those communities that the Thrive Grant is trying to focus on. However, I did think that actually that their board and their activities reflect the diversity and the target communities, the communities that Thrive really wants to target. And yeah, so I scored them high.
Thank you. Secondary, Savita.
Good afternoon. So I scored them in the middle to lower level because my big question around their application was their leadership. The supporting material was wonderful. The applicant did a great job getting supporting material that spoke about the diversity and broad-based inclusion. However, their application itself did not speak about the leadership, who is in the leadership and how they represent the communities that the Thrive grant is focusing on. And for that reason, and that particular segment, they scored low, which brought their overall score to the middle level in my case. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Savita. At this time, we'd like to ask other panelists if they would invite you to share your comments. If you haven't.
I'll just say that I kind of echoed Savita's comments. And another concern that I had, I also scored this in the medium to low range, was around the responsiveness of their activities to the current needs of their community. There wasn't enough information to say that the activities that they're putting forth over the next year are really in response to the existing needs that are present in their community right now.
If there are no other comments, and then we will be moving on. Savita, are you ready for the next one? Yes. Okay.
Yes, so we are going to be discussing Color Arc Productions. I thought, so I scored this particular grant applicant fairly high on my scale of scoring. I thought that they were doing excellent. The proposal demonstrated that they were not only focused on the AAPI community, but also on other communities that are at risk of marginalization and erasure. So I scored them high on all of that. Their leadership was also directly related to their mission statement. So I thought it was really interesting that they had an immigrant, a first generation, and a refugee origin person on their leadership team. And I thought that represented a rather broad variety of experiences that led to the work, that informed the work that they do. I thought it was interesting the way they created programs specifically for the deaf community. That was intentional. It was not that we will provide an ASL interpreter, but that they went to the community and said what kind of programs, and they built a play around that. I thought that was a really interesting piece as well. So and the other piece is when I was looking at the application, I was looking at what does the Thrive grant support? Was it primarily just additional programming? Was it to increase capacity? And there is that is a little of an issue for me, because if you're just investing in new programs and not really building capacity, the minute the program money goes away for new programming, then you haven't really grown. Whereas in this case, this particular organization invested some of the funds towards operational growth. So they scored in the middle range for me as far as the cultural institution status section goes. With that, I'll close.
Thank you. Secondary, Mia.
I pretty much echo all of Savita's comments. I don't really have much more to add there. I also scored this relatively high, but yeah.
At this time, we'd like to invite the other panelists to add anything. Okay, looks like we don't have any additional comments or,
If there are no other comment, I also wanted to say, just in regards to the cultural institution status, that, it's okay to both do new programs, but also, build off of or, regrow your programs after the pandemic. So just letting, panelists know that that is an option to be considered as well. Not necessarily saying you have to change your score, but just, make sure that you're considering that when you're considering. If there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And the next application up for review will be Women in Jazz Association. Mia is the primary. Ursula is not able to be here right now, so we will just have Mia giving comments on this particular application. Mia, let me know whenever you're ready to begin.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought this application was very strong. I scored this was one of the highest scoring applications that I had put forth. They were representative of the communities that were seeking to serve through this grant program. And their leadership was strong. The point where they lost points for me was accessibility. They did not articulate any kind of real efforts going beyond what is required by the ADA. But that was pretty much the only piece that I really had a problem with. Other than that, I thought this was a very strong application.
And we had no secondary, so comments from other panelists? No other comments, anything that hasn't already been said? Anybody would like to state about this application? If not, if you would please finalize your scores. The next application up for review will be Imagine Art. DJ and Mia are our primary and secondary. And DJ, whenever you're ready to begin.
So I scored this particular application relatively low. And my reason, what I liked about them, it was very commendable, the work that they are doing for the disabled community. We didn't have a lot of applications that focused on this constituency. And so it was very good to see this representation for that particular community. I also like that they offered their services either free or at low cost to erase financial barriers across the board. What I would have liked to have seen more and what influenced my scoring was I would have liked to have seen a stronger emphasis on how the percentages of use for the grant monies that they were seeking would target the constituencies in relation to the grant's purpose. And I would have liked to have seen stronger evidence of diversity in their leadership based on the application.
Thank you. Secondary, Mia?
I echo what DJ just said, especially for me, the leadership component. They're an organization that is focused on supporting those with disabilities. And they said that the majority of those making the decisions are not people who have disabilities. So I think there's just a disconnect there. But yeah, other than that, I got nothing new to add.
And at this time, want to invite other folks to add something. We're going pretty quickly through the process, so it would be great for other folks to make sure there's some. Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I scored them high. And it's great to hear other feedback. I think my response was directed really thinking about their mission and their activities as based towards their mission. And it is a community that gets little recognition and little attention in terms of art. And so I just really wanted to validate the work that they're doing. You know, I understanding the limits of their leadership, and DJ really understanding how they're accessing the funding. And then that's a great thought, and I want to keep that, but I also want to urge that they are completing their activity does support their mission. And I think that's great.
Savita, did you have your hand? Okay.
Yeah, so I echo Lisa. I scored them pretty high in my review of the application because I loved their history of service. They heard what the community needed, and at every instance they came back with the services that the community needed. And I thought that was a very powerful part of their proposal. But then I also go back to what Mia said about the leadership piece, and I literally copied the segment from their application where they said 45% of the leadership are folks with disabilities, which means that the majority is not the community that they are seeking to serve. And that is one of the places where I did not score them high because of that reason. I thought, again, just want to reiterate and commend the organization for the way in which they have reacted and provided support to the community as they have noticed the needs and have adapted as needed.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, if you would please finalize your scores. And then as you're finalizing your scores, the next application up for review is Torch Literary Arts. Lisa and DJ are our primary and secondary. And Lisa, whenever you're ready to begin, and I'm not using my theater voice, I'll try speaking a little bit louder. Lisa, whenever you're ready to begin.
That's so assertive, Jesus. One moment, please.
And we know it can take time to, finalize your scores and then open up the other application in our portal application system. So for those of you in attendance watching, please know that the 10-minute max time for your application, that time does not begin until the primary starts giving their review. So no need to be worried about that.
Okay, I just have to remind myself of you know, 59 is a there are a lot of groups and there are a lot doing a lot of great work out there. And I scored Torch very high. I thought that I was very impressed, and I said it was a great start for organization. I think that they are you know, they're starting out. They don't have such a great long history. However, I was very impressed with their board, and I think the only area that I had question about was accessibility, and yeah. So, but I thought it was a great grant. I think their mission is very good, and I think that they will provide a great service.
Thank you. And just a reminder that for the, you know, it's a great comment, but just a reminder about the history, that as long as they have the 5-year history, that meets the minimum eligibility requirements. But I understand you were just talking about that, but just both for the applicants in attendance and for the panelists to remember. And then secondary, DJ, whenever you're ready to begin.
So I agree with what Lisa said, just pretty much across the board. And the key highlights for me was the support for literacy for a group at risk of cultural erasure. Not a lot of representation, so they definitely strongly met that standard for me. And I really appreciated that they did a lot of in-person and online work and offered mentoring to that group. And as Lisa said, the only point was the accessibility. That's it.
And at this time, we'd like to invite Savita or Mia to add anything that you may have.
I'd like to just add, I'd like to just add that I think they did a really good job of explaining how their programming is responsive to the current needs of their community. So I just wanted to give a shout out for that.
Savita?
I think Mia touched on what I was going to say, so we are in sync. And I also scored this application very high. I was so impressed with the work that they're doing in the community and the value of that. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing your scores, the next application that we'll be reviewing is Indie Meme. We only have a primary here for this one currently, so it'll just be a primary. And then we will open up to other panelist comments once the primary, Savita, has given her her review. And so Savita, whenever you're ready to begin. And again, as we're getting the panels or the applications ready, it is in our online system, so it takes, you know, just a moment to pull those up and get those ready. Has the panelist comments in them. They've done preliminary scores and reviews. So again, your timing for the 10-minute maximum review of each application will not start until the primary starts giving their comments.
okay. So ready to review Indie Meme. I scored this application on the lower end of the upper scale, so not very high, not middling, but definitely not the highest score. I thought that the work that they're doing is very impressive. The types of films that they bring in, and the broadening of that film community to Iran and other places as well. That was very interesting. And that was driven by community engagement. That was interesting. The fact that the 75% of their cultural leadership is Asian, South Asian, was also valuable. I thought the intersectionality piece, which covers content and issues surrounding race and gender and class, disability, that was important. I thought that the ability to, so they're focused primarily on bringing their operations back to the pre-pandemic level, and that was an important point in their application for the cultural institution status. Overall, great work led by a good group of people from the community that they are trying to serve.
Thank you, Savita. Comments from other panelists?
Lisa, DJ, Mia?
I too scored them in the low mid, and I think that was more about their impact, the community impact. I thought the programming was great, and I thought their mission is great. I just think they need to, reach out more to their community and get more support that way, or at least reflect that in the grant application.
I had kind of a note here about their activities. I think they definitely push like cultural heritage forward without a doubt. But I didn't see the responsiveness piece to the current needs of the community. And so that was just kind of lacking for me. And same with the intersectionality piece. I think how I interpret what was there was like, yes, it does occur, but it's not intentional. And so for that reason, I scored it a little low. It didn't seem to me to be an intentional focus of the organization, but more of a happy byproduct.
And I strongly agree with Mia's assessment.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing this application, the next one to be reviewed will be Shalom Austin, Mia and Lisa, primary and secondary. But go ahead and finish out finalizing your scores for this one. And then we'll move on to Shalom Austin whenever you are ready, Mia.
Okay. So for this one, I scored it mid to high range across the board. I thought their mission was great, serving the Jewish community in Austin, which I know is a smaller one than other regions of the country. Some areas where they lost points for me was I was unclear if all of their leadership identifies as members of the Jewish community. There wasn't information provided about that, so I just wasn't sure. When it came to the opportunity creation piece, a lot of it was talking about things that had happened in the past. And I wasn't sure if these programs were going to be continuing, and would they continue to be creating opportunities as time goes on. And then for the accessibility piece, it didn't seem like there was much more happening than what's required by the ADA. There doesn't seem to be any specialized accessibility services that they were seeking to provide. Yeah. That's all I got.
Thank you. Secondary, Lisa?
I'm on. Okay, yes. I am in total sync. I scored them high with questions around the intersectionality and of course access. But the mission, I think is solid and yeah, nothing more.
And at this time, I'd like to invite the other panelists, Savita, DJ. Do you have anything?
I think I'm in agreement with what was said. I made the assumption that the cultural leadership reflected the community, and I just re-reviewed the application and it does not specify. So thank you for bringing that point up. And that's an important thing to think about as we are reviewing these grant applications. And that should be something that is incorporated into the application. So I would recommend that the organization put that information in.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I scored them relatively on the lower scale for those very reasons that have been already discussed by my fellow panelists.
Any other comments from the panel? If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing your scores, the next application up for review will be SIPM. DJ and Savita are our primary and secondary. So SIPM, as you're closing out the previous application, and the timer will begin whenever DJ is ready to start.
Okay, so I scored this application somewhere in the middle. And the things that I really appreciated about their proposal was that they worked with leading practitioners in the field and used them as their teachers. And that they had year-round programming with strong emphasis on summer learning activities for their students. I thought that was very commendable. I also thought it was very commendable that they so thoroughly explained their intended use of funds. Very, very thorough there. Left me with no questions about how the funds would be used. What I would have liked to have seen more of is more language and attention paid to the inclusion piece, as well as the accessibility piece. I could not find strong evidence of either in my analysis of the proposal as written.
Thank you. Secondary, Savita.
Thank you. I scored this application in the mid to high range. I had the same questions that DJ had with their accessibility piece. It's the ADA compliance was the only thing that I saw. Cultural leadership, mission, etc., and the thorough documentation of their expenses, how they would be allocating the grant funds were really impressive. I did notice that their budget documentation was a little, it was missing a couple of data points, and that's something that maybe we could make sure that the grant applicant looks through and finishes up. I totaled the values separately and was able to match, but it was missing that total values field. Just something to point out. Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to invite the other panelists. Mia, Lisa, if you have anything.
Yeah, it's interesting because I scored them in the low mids for all the exact reasons DJ and Savita mentioned. And I really looked at the intersectionality, the access, and the budget. And how the budget reflected for me was around cultural institution and what was in the budget that was building that towards the framework. And I just didn't find that there.
Mia, do you have anything? Okay, all right.
If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And as you are finalizing, the next application will be Jump On It. Lisa is our primary. Ursula is not here, so we will just be hearing from Lisa on Jump On It. But finalize your scores with the other application, please. And hold on just a second. And Lisa, whenever you are ready to begin, just let us know. The timing will start when Lisa starts giving her review.
Okay, Jump On It. I scored them high. I think their mission is very relevant. I think that their activities drive the mission. I think that their activities respond to not just what's happening now, but over the course and history of the organization, as they've shown it, they are very responsive to their specific communities' needs in terms of what's currently impacting that community. They prove to have a long history of service. And I think the places where they were challenged in their application is around accessibility. And I think also that they, as shown through their budget, is an organization that should be supported in terms of their institution building.
Thank you, Lisa. This time we're going to open it up to the other panelists to offer some insight, particularly since Ursula's not able to join us. So it'd be great to have some other perspectives.
I can go. I scored this in the mid-range. You know, some concerns I had. Oh, just lost my notes. Let me find them. Some concerns that I had was around their leadership. There was clear information that some of the leaders reflect the community, but I couldn't be certain if the majority of them or all of them do. So for me, I had to take some points off there. And then when it comes to opportunity creation and community benefit, I would have liked to have seen a little more information about what type of skills are being built through their programs and how they benefit their community in the short term and long term. You know, education is very broad. So I would have liked just a little bit more detail about what are they taking away from their programs.
And I just wanted to add, I was with Mia on the points that she made. The thing that I also caught my eye was that one of the people who was on their teen programs is now in the leadership position. So that continued growth and inclusion was an important point for me in scoring this particular application, that it is a long-term institution, and it is important enough in the community and valued enough in the community that young people who've gone through it come back to lead it. So that was just one point that I wanted to pull up.
Thank you. Any other comments? If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then the next application up for review will be India Fine Arts. Savita and Lisa are our primary and secondary, but we're finalizing the scores on the previous one. And then we will start whenever Savita is ready.
Okay. So this is one of the applications that scored in the higher range for me. As a South Asian from the community that India Fine Arts represents, I have to say that I've attended many of the music concerts that they have put on and appreciate the work that they have done to bring South Indian classical music to the greater Austin area. So wanted to just share that. And I thought the application was very clear as far as their work with the key constituencies. But I thought it was interesting about how they were, the kinds of programs that they were bringing forth as well. And let me just pull that piece up. The Strings for Peace, which brought in the Ukrainian war right now and the need for peace in that area. And then the piece by Mallika Sarabhai that was about women and how they are paid less, and then depicting that inequity through dance. That was very timely and culturally responsive in my mind. I thought that opportunity creation, they were a little low on that for me. And then they were low on the accessibility and the ADA section as well. It felt like they were offering classes for the blind in our community, but it didn't really address accessibility as an organization. So they scored a little lower on those sections. And I thought that the ways in which they were going to be using funding from the Thrive Grant was appropriate in building up their cultural institution status.
Thank you. Lisa?
I too scored them very high. I thought it was a great application in all areas. So I ditto Savita.
At this time, thank you, Lisa, sorry. We'd like to invite the other panelists, DJ. Yeah. DJ, you're shaking your head. Are you trying to get off mute? Or are you?
So it's really helpful for me to hear the feedback from Savita in particular about the impact that this organization has directly had on her in the community. And I think that helps me to broaden my understanding of how important something like this is to that community, and how it directly relates to my score is I scored them on the lower tier for certain areas, including cultural impact. And after listening to Savita, I feel like I'm going to revisit that score with a better understanding and lens of the importance of the impact.
Thank you. Mia, do you have anything or you? Okay, thank you.
If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. All right, so we're going to continue on with a few more applications before we take our break panel. Unless anybody, is everybody good now to continue on for another 5, 10, another 2 or 3 applications? Okay. So we will continue on. So that was India Fine Arts. Next application up for review is New School of Music. DJ and Lisa are our primary and secondary. And DJ, whenever you are ready to begin.
Okay, so my notes here on the new school, what I scored it on the lower, relatively lower end. And my reasoning was based on, I could find no clear evidence of how target constituents have historically, currently, or in the future are served as a priority relative to the mission of the grant as it is written. It doesn't mean that it's not there. I just couldn't find evidence of it in the writing. It was very broad and very general, and it led me to question how much of a percentage of communities at risk of cultural erasure or of disappearing was actually there. On the topic of intersectionality, based on my interpretation of the proposal, I could not find clear evidence of how those communities that are targeted by this grant are specifically centered in that grant proposal. So I would have preferred to have seen stronger writing around those areas, in particular expressing that. And so for that reason, I did not score this on the higher tier.
Thank you. Secondary, Lisa?
Yes, I too, I scored this group on the lower tier. And I think I started with their mission, and I don't think that their mission really involves the goals for Thrive. Not that there's anything wrong with their mission, it's just not, I think, a Thrive mission. And, as we go down and look at intersectionality and I just don't think it was a fit, so I scored them low.
This time, we'd like to invite other panelists to chime in.
I scored them in the mid-range, but listening to both DJ and Lisa talk about the mission, I think they're right. It isn't specific and doesn't really align perfectly with the Thrive. So I'm going to review my scores. Yeah.
Savita, do you have anything additional that you'd like to add here?
Agree with the rest of the panelists. I was impressed with the amount of work that they do with the schools in Austin and the kinds of projects that they offer up students. I thought that was an interesting bit of information that I gathered from here. And again, looking at the cultural leadership, that the intersection between the communities that are in danger of being erased and cultural erasure it was not majority. So that was the other piece that I was a little concerned about. I think ADA as well. It was not very clear exactly how, I think beyond ADA, they did not have accessibility listed in their grant application. So I have also scored them in the middle to low range.
Any other comments from the panel? If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then the next application, while you're finalizing your scores on this one, next application up for review is Austin Gay Men's Chorus. Sabita is our primary on that one. And then Sabita, whenever you are ready to begin. And you are, okay, there you go, Savita.
Yeah. Oh, just 1 second, my window closed. So give me 1 second, I need to reopen. All right. So I believe I scored this in the higher range of my scores, but it is not one of my top scoring applications. I thought the mission and the constituency that they are serving, it all makes sense. And their history is deep and long within the Austin area, 30 years of service. That clearly came across. The demographics of the board was interesting for me. That I didn't quite parse all of the descriptors that they had, cisgender gay men and cisgender women. I needed to understand exactly how that mapped back to their community. So some more description explanation would have been helpful over there to connect the dots between the community that they serve and the people who make up the board. And then I was thinking the accessibility, adaptations for people who need ASL or other adjustments was offered only informally and when requested by the community, as opposed to being built into what they do. And they are in ADA compliance spaces, but that brought their score down for me from that angle. Those were my key points.
Thank you, Savita. And just a clarification before we move on to any other comments. When you were talking about cisgender, and were you saying you don't know what the definition of that is, or just that the information that they provided, could have been?
So I think it would have helped to provide some additional information within the grant application itself, because to me, those were different terms, but they were used together. And so I was not clear. So I had to go look it up, and it's fine. But for strengthening the application, this was the feedback I had.
Okay, excellent. Just wanted to check if the information was there, to let you know what that was, but you were able to find that. So thank you. Just wanted to be clear on that.
And at this time, I'd like to invite the other panelists to give some input.
I would just like to add, I also, well, I scored them in the mids, in the low mids, and while I thought their mission and the history of their work scored high, I felt that in accessibility, in their cultural leadership, and yeah, in those areas, I scored them lower because I just didn't think that they, one, accessibility, there was not a conscious thought about that. And I think that has to be important. I think that that if we are to see systemic change, that it has to be more than ADA compliance, that it has to be intentional. And so we're looking for that intentionality. And the same in cultural leadership as well. And so yeah, so those are my comments.
Thank you. Mia or DJ?
I agree with Lisa's assessment, especially centered around the cultural leadership component. That was challenging for me, and so I scored them as well in the low mids for those reasons.
If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then we'll stop for a break here. We're right at 2 o'clock, and we're actually ahead of schedule. So let's take a 15-minute break. We can be back at 2:15. And so if we can pause the recording. Alrighty, and we are back from our break to continue our review of the Thrive panel. I am Jesus Pantel, the Cultural Funding Supervisor, facilitating the meeting today. We also have a co-facilitator, Priscilla Hale, outside consultant helping with equity work. Anything you'd like the folks that are watching to know, Priscilla?
Just excited to be here to work with you all on helping nonprofit organizations who face potential cultural erasure has the possibility of receiving some funds to be able to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. And Priscilla is helping us again, with our review of the applications. The panelists have all reviewed the applications prior to today and given preliminary scores and comments. They are able to change their scores today if they'd like to, but they are not required to. We have a 10-minute maximum review for each application. We've been going faster than that today. But the timing does not start until the primary starts giving their review. Since we are using the online portal system, it can take a moment or so for the application to load. So just for anybody in attendance or watching, your time does not start until the primary starts actually reviewing. So hold on just a second, please. Okay. So next application up for review is, I believe we're at E4 Youth. Let me bring up my info. Yes, E4 Youth. DJ and Mia are our primary and secondary. And DJ, whenever you are ready to begin.
Okay. So I scored this in the high range for the following reasons. I think that this application was very unique and timely, or this proposal, I should say, for its digital delivery model that centers on the communities that the Thrive Grant seeks to serve the most. I also liked that they had a strong emphasis on allowing students to tell their own stories in a digital format. I found that very refreshing to see a proposal that that centered around that activity. Let's see. Areas of improvement for me. They did not have a statement on accessibility, so that did affect my final scoring. And the other area that I struggled with, but I also, understood according to the rubric, was the cultural institution statement. For me, their proposal showed how a Thrive grant would stabilize their existing activities, but I found no clear evidence of how it would grow and sustain those activities into the future. So for that reason, I did deduct a couple of points. Otherwise, I found the grant to be an outstanding, or the proposal to be an outstanding submission.
Thank you. Secondary, Mia?
I had a slightly different take on this application. I scored them more in the mid-range. One thing to note, DJ had mentioned about the cultural institution status. I didn't have a clear understanding of what they were using the funds for. The narrative was kind of vague. And when I went to the budget, it didn't, in my head, match what little narrative there was there. So I just had a hard time piecing that together. And secondly, with this being a 100% youth serving organization, there isn't any acknowledgement or mention of youth voice in their leadership. That's something I would have liked to see, since that is their sole focus, is how do they get the youth voice in their decision making, and how does it inform different areas of programming. But other than that.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to invite Savita or Lisa to add anything.
Thank you. A couple of things. In the history of service section, I thought that it was lacking in data. So the broad general statements about participants and youth impacted by this program, but I would have liked to see some data on really the number of participants over the years, the length of engagement for all of the 3 core programs. So that for me was a little bit of a miss over there. I loved what they're doing, capturing East Austin before it's all lost to gentrification. So they were great with that. The partnerships that they mention are fantastic because they are youth serving organizations within the city of Austin, but for other communities. And so that having them collaborate and work together with the other organizations, I thought was fantastic. And the fact that the participants, the youth, acquire marketable skills. I also had concerns with the budget documentation. So this is why they didn't score as high as I would have liked to have scored them. But great proposal.
I too scored them in the mid-range, and I had budget concerns as it related to the cultural institution framework, and yes, about the youth voice in the leadership. And so I'm just dittoing both Savita and Mia.
If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores and we'll move on to the next application. And so the next application up for review is Austin Jazz Society. Lisa is our primary. And again, it may take a moment to finalize your scores on this one and then open up the new application. So the 10-minute timer will begin for Austin Jazz Society whenever Lisa is ready to start her comments.
Okay, Austin Jazz Society. I scored them in the low mids. I scored them. I thought that their mission did not necessarily address, again, the intention of Thrive. I'm not sure they made a case for that for me. And the history of their programming, I did not make the connection. Their cultural leadership did not make that for me as well. And so, yes, so generally, you know, while their work is good and they're doing the work, I'm not certain if their targeted community and the way they present their activities is really a Thrive grant.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to invite the other panelists, Savita, DJ, Mia, to chime in.
I also scored it in the same range. I agree with Lisa's assessment of the proposal, and I have nothing further to add.
I echo both of their comments, and I also scored them in the low range. One piece that I wanted to call out was the disconnect between the budget description and the actual budget. They talk about this youth jazz orchestra program, but the majority of the funding is for a consultant, but they're talking about bringing on an executive director. So the three things didn't quite come together in my mind. So a more clearer description would have been helpful for the budget. And then that would have probably strengthened their cultural institution status segment of the application. And then the cultural heritage team or cultural leadership wasn't clear whether that was aligned to what the Thrive grant is looking for. And again, the erasure didn't match the mission. So again, unless we're thinking about jazz as the item or the art form that is at risk of erasure in Austin, I couldn't quite match it back to the Thrive grant.
Thank you. If there are no further comments from the panel, if you would please finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing your scores on this one, the next application up for review is Capital View Arts. DJ and Lisa are our primary and secondary. And DJ, whenever you're ready to begin.
Okay, so I scored the Capital View high, and because I was just so impressed with how they're able to accomplish so much with so little. And they have a very passionate community of supporters, as evidenced by their letters of recommendation. I just found them, all of the applicants had very thoughtfully written letters of recommendation, but theirs were standouts for me. The wraparound services piece that they have, centering on well-being, I thought was commendable. And the things that I would like to have seen them improve upon was they did not list an accessibility statement, which of course hurt their score some. And I was also impressed that they had strong evidence of financial responsibility and stewardship with very limited funding. And I believe that in addition to the accessibility statement, the other thing that did not allow me to give a better score was the cultural institution statement. But for me, this organization only lacks funding to achieve that. That's the key ingredient that they're missing. They're doing the work anyway. And I wanted to reward that level of effort with so little funding traditionally that they've been able to receive in the past based off of what they were actually able to deliver to the community.
Thank you. Secondary, Lisa?
Yes, I scored them relatively high. And for all the reasons DJ just articulated, she did a great job, so I don't need to add anything other than that. Again, the accessibility and the institutional, the budget, as the budget reflects, and the cultural institutional framework. I think that maybe people need to get a better understanding of what that is meant for, what that Thrive money, what that means for them. But I too agree with everything DJ said.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the other panelists to chime in, Mia and Savita.
I echo all the statements. I thought this was a really strong application.
Same. I thought it was a fantastic application. It's one of the higher scoring ones in my list as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you, panelists. If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing your scores on that one, the next application up for review is Puerto Rican folkloric dance. Mia is our primary. And whenever you are ready to begin for Puerto Rican folkloric dance, Mia.
Okay. Overall, I scored this application pretty high. Some things I liked about it. This is if not only one that's focused on Puerto Rican culture in this bunch, which I thought was interesting. So, their leadership represents the community that they're trying to serve. The areas where they just lost a few points for me was in their activities section. It's clear that it's pushing heritage forward, but I did not see how the activities were responsive to any existing and current needs in the community. So I had to take a few points off there. And then intersectionality. I have a note here that it says it doesn't seem to be intentional. I think I've said this already once today, but like a happy byproduct. I didn't see anything that intersectionality is what they're striving for. So that's where they lost a few points in my score. This is a really strong application. And yeah.
Thank you, Mia. This time I'd like to invite the other panelists to add in.
I agree with Mia's assessment. I scored it in, this is one of my higher scoring applications, and I really did appreciate the fact that they were representing a community that we didn't have many more applicants for. So I concur with Mia 100%.
Savita and Lisa, or Lisa. All right.
The same, this was one of the applications that was high scoring for me, and I really liked that they incorporated Taino as one of the languages that in the list of intersection and I think in accessibility they talk about it, and I thought that was very cool that language is being brought up and held up even within the Austin city limits. So
Yeah, I scored it high as well for all those reasons.
Thank you, panelists. Any further comments? If not, if you will please finalize your scores. And we will move on to the next application whenever y'all are ready. Austin Asian American Film Festival. Sabita and Lisa are our primary and secondary. Again, may take a little bit, just a moment to pull the application up as we're finalizing the scores from the previous one. But Sabita, whenever you're ready to begin.
thank you. So this is one of the applications that got almost full marks from me because it was, in my mind, very thoughtfully presented, all of the work that they do. So going through, their mission is very clear, their activities and history of service, very clear. They do have broad Asian and Chamorro representation in key leadership roles. I thought that was pretty cool. And the fact that they do a lot of outreach specific to cultural community groups so that they showcase the particular pieces that are current and relevant. That was important. The fact that the juried show, that they have a juried set of films and that they're selected through jury panels, I interpreted that as saying, okay, that will ensure current cultural relevance, but that is a point that I'm not sure whether my fellow reviewers will agree with, so I'm curious to hear what they have to say. I thought there was broad representation of Asians in the films and in the participants, and one idea that I absolutely loved in their grant application was that culturally, Asian communities traditionally, you don't put yourself out in front and try and talk in public, etc. So the fact that they had upvoting for questions that were raised so that the community voice was heard when there were question and answers and discussions in the community, I thought that was a really interesting way of, and very, very thoughtful, culturally appropriate way to engage the voices of the audience. So that got lots of marks from me. And the fact that they have subtitles in English and traditional Chinese and 2-language subtitles in a lot of these instances was impressive. And I thought they were a good candidate for this grant application.
Thank you. And secondary, Lisa.
Yes, I scored them relatively high. I took some points off for intersectionality. And there was another area, cultural leadership. I wasn't, and I took that to a different kind of thought process of where they are within, and I'm sorry, community, where they are within their community. And so I just took points off from that. But the jury, I thought was, in response to your kind of, I thought that was a good thing. I thought that having a jury, that was a plus for me. And just one other thing. I think the no, the cultural institution. So yeah, so the cultural institution, I think that in their budget, I may have had some questions about that with, again, within the framework of their budget. But I did score them relatively high.
So just to clarify, when you said you may have had some questions, that it wasn't clear, so you would like to have seen it,
Yeah.
the budget match more, the
Yes.
budget itself match more with the narrative.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Comments from other panelists? Savita, or no, you were the primary, Mia or DJ? Ursula is with us now. Ursula, did you have any comments for this particular application, the Austin Asian American Film Festival? Oh, and you are muted.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Apologies for showing up late. Not that it wasn't already covered. I also scored this fairly high and thought it was a strong candidate. So I don't have any additional critiques.
So for me, I struggled a little bit with parts of this application because it felt more like an event than a programmatic, longevity. It's like they plan for that particular event, and then after that, it kind of left me wanting to understand. They gave anecdotal examples of how particular people were impacted by witnessing the film, but I wanted to understand how the community directly benefited from those 4 days. It's like, okay, we watched a bunch of great films by amazing Asian creatives, and then we go home. So for me, I didn't feel that strong connection. I think it's a great program, and I think that there's definitely a need for the services that they provide. I didn't get through the grant proposal how that all connected.
Thank you, DJ. And for clarification, both for the panel and for the applicants, staff has not reviewed the applications in depth. For some organizations, so that's part one of the application. The second part is, with that being said, some applicants, maybe they do one festival throughout the year, but it's in preparation for that, and so that is fine. But that's also a good comment to make if that's not what the case was. And so, we are asking the panelists to provide feedback for what they would have liked to have seen, what would have made the application stronger. So, so thank you for that, DJ. Any other comments from other panelists? If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And while you're finalizing, We have had Ursula join us, but let's go ahead, give her a chance to get settled. Let's take maybe uh 10-minute break. Let's do 15. We've got like 2 or 3 more to go. We're almost done. We're scheduled to go till 4. So let's break until 3 o'clock. It's 2:44 right now. That gives us a 15-minute break. Um, and then we will, oh, so let's stop the recording. Forgot about that. All righty, and we are back from our break. The next application up for review is Oliver Rajamani, doing business as Taranada. Ursula and DJ are our primary and secondary. The 10-minute max for each application will begin once Ursula is ready to start giving her commentary. So Ursula, whenever you're ready to begin. And you are muted, Ursula.
I'll get this one day. Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks for everybody's patience with me. I guess I'll start with I was impressed by the overall mission and the intersectionality of how many different communities were represented and involved. I also appreciated that instead of it being a one-time event, they had monthly. Oh wait, am I thinking about the right one? Let me check my notes, make sure I have the right. Oh yeah, I thought that their online presence was really impressive. They had some great audience members, and I think having a strong online community and audience also helps with accessibility. So I scored it pretty high on both accessibility and intersectionality. I was a little concerned with how young their collaborative organization is. It looks like they started at the later part of 2022. Even individually, they had all been serving the community a little bit longer. I was concerned that they don't have a long history of collaboration. And let's see. I was also curious if what the combination of local musicians versus guest musician. I wasn't fully clear on the ratio, and that's something that I was concerned about just for stimulating the local economy of artists. And let's see. I think those were my main strengths and weaknesses for this proposal.
Great, thank you. And
Yeah.
secondary, DJ.
So I really enjoyed reading this particular proposal, and I scored it in the relatively high range. I really enjoyed and thought they were on point with their mission statement. I thought it was clearly articulated, as well as the comments on the constituency served. I think it was like a laser on point type of statement. I really appreciated the clarity. The only challenges I faced with this particular proposal was on the opportunity and accessibility pieces, as well as on the cultural institution piece because of the age of the organization. Otherwise, I thought it was a very well done proposal.
Thank you, DJ. At this time, we'd like to invite the other panelists to chime in, add anything that you might have. Savita, Lisa, Mia. No?
So I think the panel knows this, so this is more for the applicant's reference. But when we talk about the age of the organization, staff has done a preliminary review and looked at the eligibility. So as long as it has that 5-year eligibility, we do count, even if they don't have to have been a 501c nonprofit for 5 years, they can utilize the experience they've known beforehand. I believe the panel knows that, but I'm just making that clear. And so the comment was, it could have been, since it is, relatively newer, it may not necessarily be as strong as someone who is more established, but it does meet, just so the panel knows and the applicant, as long as it meets the 5-year minimum eligibility requirement, that is what we are concerned about. So if there are no that's an eligibility, you can take other things into consideration in your score, but that is not going to disqualify them or necessarily score them lower. Just take that into consideration, panel, when you are providing the scores.
Yeah, just a clarification, Ursula, did I understand that you said it was the collaborative agency organization that you were concerned about, not even the organization that was applying?
Yeah, it would just,
It's the collaborative.
when they talk about what the history, yeah, for the history of their program, it says it was established at the latter end of 2022. So even though the individuals have a history of serving the community, my understanding was that this collaborative version of what they're trying to do is fairly young, is how I understood it. And that was my concern, because without having a strong history of how people are working together and executing a common goal, there can be some friction.
Okay, thank you. I see other folks shaking their heads, so it seems like that other folks gathered the same thing. So just wanted to make sure.
Thank you for that, Priscilla and panelists. Thank you. Any further comments on this application? If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And we will move on to our next application, Cine Las Americas. Ursula and Mia are primary and secondary. And Ursula, whenever you're ready to begin.
Great, let me find I'm loading the application now. All right, thank you. For this one, I scored fairly high. I was impressed with the specificity of their budget for cultural institution. They were one of the most specific and detailed of how they would use the funding. And let's see, I also appreciated the long history of service for the community. I thought that provided a lot of opportunity to show just strength and their collaborative ability to know the community and to serve the community, since they've been around since the 90s. I also appreciated that there were monthly events and not just a singular annual event. That was something that was important to me when I was writing the grants. If it was just having the funding go into one annual event, I thought there would be less impact, but because they have a sustained monthly showing of films, I think that's a great opportunity for education and also promotion for their annual event, to make it as meaningful and impactful as possible. Also, overall, I just think that film is an incredibly useful tool for visibility and for storytelling and for education. So just overall, I thought it was very strong, and the way they talk about their intersectionality and who they're including, and the people who are in the board are representing the communities that they're bringing visibility to. Overall, I just thought it was a really strong application, and I scored it very high. And they
Thank
all-
you. Secondary? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ursula.
Oh, no, I forgot to mention that I was impressed by the high volume of volunteers that they had listed as well. It's very clear that the community is supporting them back in return.
Thank you. Secondary, Mia?
I echo much of what Ursula said. I had very high scores for this application. Really, the only place that they lost, a few points of mine was the thing I feel like I keep saying is that the application doesn't demonstrate how it's responsive to the current needs of the community based on the activities that were outlined. But other than that, I thought it was a really, really strong application. I would have just liked to know how what they're doing is responsive to those needs.
Thank you, Mia. Would like to invite the other panelists at this point to chime in anything. DJ, Lisa, Savita.
So for me, one area of concern, I echo what has been said, but another thing that I have not heard discussed is when they're telling stories, they were clear about who they're telling the stories of. I was a little taken I had pause for understanding who those stories were being told to. The inclusion piece, it's like, okay, we're telling these stories, but then it wasn't clear to whom would be receiving this information. And so that was an additional small, overall a very strong proposal, as everyone has said, but that gave me a little bit of extra pause.
Good comment. Thank you, DJ. We are asking the panelists to, provide commentary for future improvement and anything that has not already been stated by one of the other panelists. Are there any other comments that have not already been stated by the panel, or anything anybody would like to reiterate? If there are no final comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then that was our last application up for review. I think, if Ursula has any comments on any that she has, Priscilla, I think you maybe had wanted to say a few words, so we're still recording the review, but we are done with the review of Cine Las Americas, since the panelists had no further comments. Priscilla, was there anything that you had wanted to share?
I think we were going to invite Ursula to add anything. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, that is correct. Ursula, are there any, particularly I guess ones that you were secondary on, but any that, you want to have, you want to give comments on now? We will have, for those watching, we will have the recording available. It will be made available to Ursula later on, so that way she can listen to what the panelists said. She can consider that when she is finalizing her scores. But if there's anything, that, is outstanding to you off the top of your head for any of the applications that you wanted to let the public or the panel know about.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if I can't seem to find the spreadsheet of, oh, wait. Yeah, I can't seem to, did we talk about the Torch Literary Arts today?
We did, yes. So if you'd like to get
Oh.
comments on that.
That I gave that one of my highest scores overall. I just thought that was an incredibly strong and powerful program. So off the top of my head, I would just like to support that program because it just seemed like one of the strongest ones submitted and is definitely in the forefront of my memory overall.
Thank you. Any other applications that you had, off the top of your head, you felt strongly about, either positively or negatively?
The Mexicart Museum had a really high score from me.
We have not discussed them yet today.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to find all the spreadsheets and I'm missing the one for today.
Okay. All right.
Ursula, you were just messaged a list of the organizations discussed today in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah. So if you want to take a moment and just look that over.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have a question or concern for the Austin Gay Men's Choir. Are gay men facing erasure in Austin was my main concern for it. That was like the main question I had about that.
And so I would say, as maybe as a panelist comment for clarification, it would have been nice to, and again, staff has not reviewed these applications in depth, but it would have been nice to tie that to show how gay men may be at risk of cultural erasure or displacement if they did not do so in the application. Making that more clear would be the panelist.
Yeah,
comment.
it was. Yeah, that was unclear to me as far as cultural erasure goes. I didn't see that well communicated in the application, so give it a lower score.
Thank you. Any others from the ones that you saw today?
Jump on it. My concern for Jump on It was that it's an annual event and not a continual support program. I thought the mission was great, but for all of the applications that were asking for funding for a single annual event, I did score lower because I was afraid the impact wouldn't be as great as some of the more sustained programs like the Torch Literary Arts, for example.
Thank you. Other comments on other applications? And again, we'll have the recording available. Can look over those, and we can. And for those in attendance, a reminder that we are doing panels slightly differently this year, in that even though we are finalizing our scores and moving on to other applications, once all 59 applications have been reviewed, the panel will look at how, which the top 35 highest scoring applications were, and then we'll see, is that really the way that they wanted those, is that how that is? So these comments that, Ursula is making now may be able to be considered when we're discussing those final 35. And again, she will have a chance to look at those tonight for us to consider maybe tomorrow as well. So with that being said, if there are no final comments on any of the applications that have been discussed today from the panel or the facilitator?
Yeah, so I'll add here. Ursula, to your, I just want to make a comment that we want to keep in mind the what Thrive is trying to do here with the funds, and that because we are looking at different organizations at different stages of growth, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's less impact. And given that there's a real big focus on either the word thrive, meaning right, sustaining, growing, we want to keep that in mind as we're thinking about the impact, right? And so I just want to just throw that piece out there. And so, yes, just as the facilitator, as one of the facilitators, I'd just like to thank the panelists for your time and energy that you have put forth today, and then the days previously to get ready for today, as we look forward to investing in funding organizations. And so also want to thank the applicants who joined us today to hear, and hope that we have given some feedback and information that will help you to be able to move forward in your cultural arts production work. You know, the Thrive Grant is about investing to sustain and grow local arts nonprofit organizations, and that are reflective of Austin's very diverse culture. And so we want to always keep that in mind as we're doing that. And, you know, it's a new program, and we're trying to do things to move forward to a more equitable place. And not saying that we are there, but definitely hoping that these funds can be utilized for that. And you know, just to uphold that the primary purpose of this program, and we're calling it a program because that's the idea, is right, is that it will be some, you know, it's not a one-time thing. It will be something that will provide support in ways, particularly around leadership and development. And so we want to think of those things as we are looking at the applicants that are coming, the applicants that have come through. That's one of the main components, is helping folks grow, but also focusing on the leadership development for groups and organizations that have been historically left out of access to funding. And so, yes, so that, you know, organizations that do that are of cultural institutions that are by, for, and about communities that are at immediate risk of cultural erasure and displacement within Austin are the absolute, you know, top of where we want to be looking at. And so we just want to also want folks to know that some of the parameters that the panelists looked at are different than a lot of grants often look at. And so that is intentional, because a lot of grant makers often do things that continually perpetuate folks having access to funding and being able to do things. And this program is specifically to address some of those things. So, you know, not looking at like grant writing necessarily, but like programming, like what, because until you can, we know that until you can grow the organization to a capacity level, there are going to be struggles within organizations. And I think we heard that very clearly from DJ, where she was pointing out a specific applicant that what they lacked was funding. And that they had been doing the work for a long time and on kind of like a shoestring kind of budget. And so we just want to you know, shout out to that and remind folks that that's what these funds are specifically for around Thrive. And so with that, I just again like to say thank you, and give the panelists an opportunity, if there are any glaring takeaways that you'd like to just leave the folks with today, we invite you to do that now. And that concludes what I have to say. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. It looks like everybody would like to say something, so if we could just popcorn it around, that'd be awesome.
Okay, well, I just wanted to take an opportunity to say to the applicants who might be online and just in general, what an amazing group of people doing good things on behalf of the community. And regardless of how they may score in the tiers for what we're able to do, they should all be very proud of themselves and the work that they're doing and the people that they're serving.
Thank you, DJ. Lisa, I think I saw your hand up next.
Yeah, I totally agree with DJ. I was, you know, when we first got together, we kind of reflected, and I just want to say that this cohort of applicants and proposals, it just really shows the depth of cultural production that's happening in Austin. And it makes me kind of little teary-eyed because, you know, I know it's long fought, right? And I know that there are groups, because I was a part of those groups, that got little or no funding, and not only about the funding, but the recognition of the greater community. So I support CAD's efforts to at least attempt to rectify it. I think Thrive is a great program. I don't think 2 years is enough in any way. And when you talk about equity, when you talk about cultural equity, it is a long-term pursuit. And so for all of the organizations that have applied, whether you get funded, whether you don't get funded, it doesn't matter in a certain way, because what we're trying to say to you is that we see you, right? And once you're seen, then we can move forward. So I just thank you for hanging in there. I mean, these are groups that have been around for 30 some years, 20, 30 years. That's incredible without the kind of infrastructure to support that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Savita?
I think DJ and Lisa said it so much more eloquently, but the thoughts were similar, that it has been such a privilege to read these applications. And I wanted to just go on record to say to any of the applicants who are listening, this has been a fantastic opportunity for me to learn, and for the city of Austin to shine a spotlight on all of these organizations that are doing amazing work and to make this the cultural capital, so to say, of Texas. And it's been wonderful, and I'm looking forward to our discussions tomorrow, when we will have an opportunity to discuss some more applicants.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Priscilla, for helping ground our work in equity. That is, you know, as you were mentioning, what this program is about. And so that is why we have brought Priscilla on as a facilitator. You know, we have our intentions, and let's make sure we are sticking with those. So thank you for that outside eye, Priscilla, for helping co-facilitate these panels. That concludes day one of the Thrive Review Panel. We will be back tomorrow, Tuesday, January 24th at 12:15 p.m. To continue the review. With that being said, thank you again for the applicants in attendance for attending today, if you're watching this recording later on. And thank you again, panelists. We'll see everyone later. Bye-bye.